Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, let's get back to Iraq because I want to highlight just one article that involves Kazhemi because he exits making some great points that people need to be aware of. Before we get started, though, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. If you are not a subscriber, please do so because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, go check out our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. So here we go. We know that there's a big issue going on in Iraq. First of all, the new government is trying to be formed. The coordinating framework wants Saudi to still be involved. But even bigger is the fact that there's something like $2.5 trillion missing. Yeah, it just ended up missing. Kazhemi is weighing in on this, and I think what he has to say is very important, so let's check it out. It said, Kazhemi announces a position on the theft of trillions. We have been quietly investigating it for months. Now, I noticed that the new government was already, before it was confirmed, throwing Kazhemi under the bus. They are preventing him from traveling outside of the country. He's going to be the sacrificial lamb. But it's interesting to hear what Kazhemi says happened once he found out about this theft. It says right here, the Iraq Prime Minister Kazhemi announced today the position on the resident theft file of the General Tax Authority, stressing that the investigation into the case has been taking place quietly for months, but some raised it to cover up the corruption, while he indicated that everyone fought his government's plan for comprehensive accountability. We see that now happening here in the United States. We know that the Dems have been involved in all types of corruption. And it seems like every time we investigate them, we can't even rely on those who investigate them. Our intelligence agencies are corrupt, the media is corrupt, the Dems are corrupt, and they all are part of the same crime family. They cover for each other. And if there's any outsider, the outsiders get attacked and get totally different treatment. But you can see what's happening. Kazhemi came in to put things right, and his own government fought him every step of the way. Kazhemi said during the cabinet session held today and reported by the media that the government was formed in a very difficult economic situation. We were on the verge of real economic collapse. And the challenges of the RONA situation and the collapse of the oil prices, as well as the international conflict that wanted some have turned Iraq into a backyard for international and regional conflicts. And with patience and wisdom, we were able to cross the challenges, explaining we developed a reform plan in the economy from the first moment and established a new economic vision through the white papers. And we succeeded in saving our economy and moving it from the stage of collapse to another stage, growth. And now, according to the international report issued this month, Iraq recorded the fastest growth in the Middle East and the second country in the world with a growth rate of 9.3%. That's ass kicking. That's why I'm disappointed that Kazhemi will not continue with his government. He pointed out that there are those who doubt the government and do not want these successes to be recorded in its name. Some say the document is old while it was issued in October. And with all this, some question reforms of this government and all the correct measures it was taken. Look, the writing was on the wall. We've seen what happened. We've seen how it was on the verge of collapsing, and we saw exactly what Kazhemi did and taking steps that he thought was necessary to save the country, and that's exactly what he did. And now look at their growth. Now look at their foreign reserve assets built up. Now look at their gold reserves. Kazhemi went on to say this government is 2.5 years old, worked for 28 months and did not receive but only 6 months worth of budget. Remember when they had a hard time passing the budget? It was crazy. With all this, we succeeded in crossing the important stage, noting that the central bank's reserves were downward. At the moment we received the government, it was $49 billion. Now it's almost at $90 billion. Great job, Kazhemi. Today we have reserves of $85 billion, and we had gold reserves of 96 tons. Today it's 134. This is due to the reform papers that we applied. Yes, it is. From the first moment, we had a vision of reform, the Ministry of Finance, which was adopted by the foreign minister, and we presented a set of reform projects and it was met with strong objections by parliamentarians and political blocs to prevent reform in the Ministry of Finance and to maintain traditional mechanisms that did not fit the times, pointing out that the former minister presented a comprehensive accounting project that requires automation and modern methods, but everyone fought it, and yet we worked on it, and it takes time. So the people who oppose these types of reforms are those that are corrupt. So you figure out who it is that's speaking out against it, and those are the people you want to remove. They like this system the way it is because it's easy to manipulate, it's easier to hide corruption, and it's easy to do corruption. He indicated that comprehensive accountability helps us to stop waste, reduce corruption, and stop manipulation in many cases, as happened with the issue of the secretariats and the tax authority, which we announced to reveal, and some tried to protect the corrupt and thieves and transfer the accusation to the government. That was my concern, that these people were doing what it takes to reveal the corruption, but now that the same corrupt government that caused the corruption is going back into power, they're just going to cover it up, and they're just going to falsely accuse other people, and those people are going to pay for it, unfortunately. Kazhemi also said the issue does not concern the government, but rather a department of the Ministry of Finance. And with all this, I was the first to alert the former minister about the phenomenon in 2021 and directed him to conduct an investigation. And in light of the investigation, he issued an order to prevent the disbursement of any tax trust without collection. Kazhemi indicated that some are trying to obstruct my success, explaining that since the first day we announced the anti-corruption project. And you remember this? Kazhemi said they had approximately 1,000 senior people in positions within the government that he wanted to remove due to corruption. As you're also aware, we saw Nader post not one but two videos of corrupt officials being arrested. So we saw that it was in the works, but unfortunately, nothing's worse than once you get started, you put the same criminals back in office, and then it was all for naught. And you have to start all over if you can get that chance. Kazhemi indicated that some are trying to obstruct any success, explaining that since the first day we announced anti-corruption project, we fought corruption and subjected to great pressure, threats, and extortion. And we saw that government did not obtain parliamentary censorship for known reasons, but rather continue opposition of it. Because of some people's interests have been harmed from the first day, we announced a fight against corruption, and we will end the last day of the government by fighting corruption. The two people, the coordinated framework, Kazhemi and Maliki. If you remember, I did a video explaining that their two banks were part of huge corruption when it came to the money auctions. They were making millions per month off these auctions based on the way it was set up. And they were the ones that had the biggest fit when, one, they devalued the currency, and two, when they took the auctions away from where it was and sent it over to Kurdistan. But now those very people are back into power, so don't be surprised to see more corruption with the currency auctions. So like I was stating, if you see members of government fighting corruption laws or fighting any type of implementation of policies that would help identify corruption, then those are the people that are corrupt. So that's how you know that there's a problem, when a political party refuses to reform what is necessary to do the right thing. He noted that the judiciary began investigation for months and quietly, but some knew the accountability would reach them. So they try to make a fuss and take advantage of some circumstances to create chaos and cover up the real corrupt and the cause of the problems. Let's not mention no names, Maliki. He indicated that when the ministry did not succeed more than 17 years ago in finding an electronic automation system that integrates with the times and the correct calculation mechanisms, and if these systems existed, we would not have fallen into these problems. And the issue of the tax trust is long-lived and has nothing to do with the government, and it is old. And with all this, we've taken a decision on this issue of comprehensive accountability and its implementation. But it needs time because it needs restructuring and arranging some procedures in the ministry. Oh well, you can kiss that goodbye, because the very people that you're trying to protect the government in Iraq from are now in power. He continued, you remember when there was uproar about the automation of customs? It also caused a problem, and there were many objections from some, but we signed agreement with the United Nations to re-automate Some joints in the Ministry of Finance, and it takes many years. And it was supposed to start in 2003, and it was adopted by all countries in the region. The custom systems that we propose are compatible and integrated with 90 countries in the world, including all the neighboring countries of Iraq. But with great regret, there are those who are trying to blackmail the government and trying to come up with populist and extortion speeches aimed at bringing down and preventing any achievement of this government. Yeah, that's the problem with this currency for those who are invested in it. Iraq is a rich country. It's unfortunately the whole country is being ran by corrupt people, and that wealth is not being passed down to the people. These people are very powerful. We see that here in this government here, and you can't really touch them. And so if there's no repercussion for the actions, like insider trading information, Nancy Pelosi, then how the hell can you fix what's wrong? So very hard to fix the government and reform it when the very people that are in power to do the oversight and point these things out are all involved in this same corruption. He pointed out there are many parties that have tried to pressure directly or indirectly that the ministry not take any measures. Despite all this, the government has adhered to the policy of silence in order to avoid any attempt to frustrate the people. On the ground, the state knows everything. And if the state wants to open the files, it will cause earthquakes. And the Iraqi situation cannot withstand earthquakes, but needs construction and patience for the future Iraqis. Right down here, this paragraph definitely caught my attention. Kazhemi says, we do not want to engage in quarrels and thus create despair amongst the people. So we prefer silence and let our work stand out. And we do not want to frustrate the people's resolve. For the people's eyes, I endured many accusations and slanders, and even assassination attempts. And I was subject to 3 assassination attempts and did not develop the subject, although the last attempt witnessed international pressure to internationalize it, and it refused to protect Iraq and the Iraqis. So the Iraqi people are in the same situation as we are over here in America. And you have to do something before it's too late. As they become bigger and more powerful and gain more money, they start developing the tools necessary to protect themselves to a point where they're almost untouchable. And they have the ability to silence one way or another individuals who speak out against what's going on. But until the people around the world stop bickering over stupid small stuff and unite to get rid of the corruption, it's never going to stop. And eventually they're going to get so powerful that they can't be stopped. So you can see it's not just here in the United States, it's happening in other countries. To make my point even more, he says right here, Kazhemi pointed out, there are those who try to question any steps taken by the government in favor of the Iraqis. With all this, we must protect everyone who raised the banner of fighting corruption. And people know that the campaign of confusion comes to try to distort the investigation or influence with its false accusations. And people know who they are, the corrupt. And they know they are big whales behind this operation. Same thing we're seeing right now in our nation. Anyways, Kazhemi goes on to thank the ministries who were committed to preserving public money and who inherited to the directives, as well as their attempt to provide services in most difficult circumstances, wondering, there has not been a government in Iraq that remains for 2 years without a budget. How did we continue to work then, and how do we succeed with deprivation of money? We have prevented the economy from collapsing, and we have built a kind of economic growth in the world that is witnessing major decline in the great challenges for all countries of the world. I mean, if you read that, it doesn't come across correctly. What Kazhemi is trying to say is, when you see economies collapsing all around the world, Iraq wasn't collapsing. They saw record economic growth. Once the elections took place over a year ago, there was some optimism. I really believed that Iraq was well on their way to rebuilding the country the right way. They had done all that they could to reform the country, the economy, get it back on track, and start weeding out those who were corrupt. In my opinion, Sadr made the biggest mistake ever. With Sadr resigning and taking with him 75 seats within Parliament, all that did was hand over the government to those very corrupt people who got that country in the position that was in the first place. Now, again, I'll repeat, for those of you who hold on to Iraqi Dinar, what does this mean? Yeah, sure, we might see an increase in the exchange rate, not because of anything good that the government's doing, but because of the corruption of the people that are in charge. So we could benefit from the corruption. I feel bad for the Iraqi people. Hopefully they'll see the light soon enough to do what's right, to take the necessary steps to make the proper changes that are needed to protect Iraq and Iraqi people. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think. I'll look forward to your comments down below, and I will catch you later. I'm out.